You know, when I was in college, I had to find a job, especially after my first semester, because I had to pay for my tuition. I was one of those students that wanted to pay for all of my tuitions, and I didn't want my parents at all to get invested in my finances, because if my parents got involved with my finances, then they had a say as to what I needed to do in my life or what I can do in my life. So I wanted to make sure that I was completely independent from my parents, and I wanted to get as much money possible so that I was able to pay for my own college tuition. And so during the summer, I was looking for a job. And our summer for our college, it was a small Christian Bible college, and our summer was 4 months long. And so 4 months, you could find a job, especially in those 4 months, to help pay for your tuition. And our tuition wasn't that much. I think around that time it was about maybe $200 per credit unit. And so it wasn't that expensive. And for many students during the summer, they were able to actually pay off the following semester. And I wanted to be like those students. But finding a job in 2015 was not easy. Finding a job in 2016 was not easy as well. And trying to look for a job around Torrance or wherever it was, I tried to look everywhere all the way to LA and so on, but it was almost impossible to find a job. And so one of my friends said, well, you know, our friend in our friend group, his name is Jeffrey, I think he's working a part-time job or knows of a job opportunity. But I thought to myself, well, I don't want to bother my friend. He's my friend. I don't want to use him. I don't want to ask him. I don't know. And you might be thinking, why not just ask him? Well, I was overthinking. I was overthinking too much a little bit about asking my friend for this part-time job. And for a while, I kept on looking for other jobs, and I was going business to business looking for a job, but I was unable to find a job. So I was being a little bit discouraged, and I was trying to pray and ask God to help me to find a job so I could pay for my tuition. I went to the gym with Jeffrey, and we went to 24-Hour Fitness. It was at Redondo Beach Boulevard at the time. Now it's Aldi's over there. They replaced the fitness center with a food center. That's pretty ironic, if I could say. And so we were working out there, and as we were working out, we're just talking about life and catching up, how college was. He was at UC Irvine, and we're just talking about how Irvine was and what good food that they were able to enjoy over there and so on. And as we're talking, he told me about his job, and he told me that somebody at his job was looking to hire somebody else to work a part-time. And I was thinking, oh wow, I don't know if I should ask him. Should I ask him? It's kind of embarrassing. I mean, he probably thinks I have a job and so on. But I decided, okay, you know what? I'm just going to ask him. I'm just going to ask him. And I asked my friend Jeffrey, hey Jeff, you know, I'm looking for a job. Do you have a job opportunity at your work that you work at? And he goes, really? Why didn't you just ask earlier this year? Why didn't you just ask earlier just for the job? I would have highlighted you as soon as possible to my boss. And then all of a sudden I see my friend waving his hand at somebody else. And I'm like wondering, what's he doing? And this older Korean gentleman comes by, and my friend gives him a high five, and he says, Hyung, you're like, my friend needs a job. And so I met the boss of that job at the gym. And so we inside, and then we talked, and I was working at a pizza machine place, and it was a great job. I enjoyed delivering pizza, and you know, one of the most joyful experiences of delivering pizza is the tip. You get a lot of tip, and if you delivered to somebody that was either drunk or high, you got a lot of tip. It wasn't like 20%, it was like 100%. And you know, I enjoyed delivering to high people. You know, that was one of the most enjoyable job experiences I had. But I never would have gotten this job if I simply did not ask. If I didn't ask my friend who was having this part-time job available right there. I could have asked earlier. I could have had 1 month earlier paycheck to get this job. If I simply chose to ask, if I stopped overthinking and I just simply asked, I would have gotten this job. In our passage this morning, David finds himself in a situation. He's in war. He was recently just appointed as king, and he was the leader of the Israelites, and he was leading the people against an enemy, the Philistines. And every time he was going into battle, no doubt, and while we may not see what's going on in his mind, no doubt he had a lot of things that were coming through his mind. He was wondering, oh, what's going to happen if we lose this battle? Oh, what's going to happen if commit a lot of casualties against us in this battle. What's going to happen to my reign? I've been only a king for just a few years. I don't know what's going to happen next. And he might have wondered all that. But notice here in our passage, David, instead of overthinking, instead of pondering upon what to do next, he simply chose to do one thing. And that was to inquire of God. That was to seek God. That was to ask God. When in doubt, when in troubles, or when in a circumstance he did not know what was going to happen, he chose to simply seek God. And the end of the story is quite simple. He was victorious over the enemies, not just the Philistines, but over multiple different types of enemies. And he became the king there that would reign for several years and decades. And he was multiple times victorious over the enemies that tried to conquer Israel. And David was somebody that was always on the path to victory. That's what it set him apart. David was a seasoned warrior, yet he never let his experience replace his dependence on God. You see, victory in life, the victory in our life comes when we seek God, when we trust in his strategy, and then we submit in obedience, which is exactly what David did. And it all began because he chose to seek and he chose to ask God what to do next. Likewise, in our life, I don't know what predicament that we may be in. I don't know what circumstances that we are facing in our life, and we may be wondering what to do next. We may be wondering which ministry to serve next. We may be wondering what kind of job should I get. We may be wondering how should I raise my family? How should I commit to a church? What kind of church I should find? What kind of spiritual life am I supposed to experience in my life here during the summer as a college student? We may have all these questions, but I want to simply ask you one question. Have you asked God what you should do? Did you seek God and ask him what you ought to do? And that is certainly what David did. And I want us to notice here, in order for us to go to this path to victory, that there are three events here that led to David's victory. First of all, notice here, renewed seeking. We see David's renewed seeking. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 22, it says, once more the Philistines came up and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired. He asked. He inquired the Lord, and he answered, do not go straight up, but circle around behind them and attack them in the front of the poplar trees. In order for us to be on the path to victory, in order for us to have a victorious Christian life, we must first renew our seeking, specifically on the Lord. Notice in our passage this morning the obstacle to that victory for David. It was the Philistines. You see, the Philistines were from a southwest territory of Israel between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. It's where they settled in a city or region in the area known as Gaza. And you can see here in the map here where the Philistine is, Philistia, the country is at the time, and the tribe there were, and they were facing the Israelites all the way here, and they were just right next to each other, and no doubt there were enemies for a long period of time, and certainly enemies that constantly warred against each other with the Israelites and the Philistines against one another. And so you see this map here. Most of the country was around the western, southern part of modern-day Israel. And you can see Gaza there, and most of them were from that area. And this was ancient Philistia empire that was warring against Israelites. And they were the major obstacle to the victory that Israel truly seek. You might have heard the Philistines do the book of Judges. They sent a woman to tempt Samson. What was her name? Delilah. And you might have also recalled that the Israelites were in constant war with this ancient tribe. It was first through Samuel. It was also first through Saul. And now it came to the point that David had to face this obstacle. And you see what happens here. David is the king of Israel. He's the king of the Israelites. And he became king after Saul's reign as king. King Saul, the previous king before, had been in sin, and therefore the Spirit of the Lord had left his leadership. No longer was God blessing his leadership, and Samuel was lamenting and crying, and the Lord calls upon Samuel to appoint a new king. And he leads him to the youngest of the sons of Jesse, and he leads to the youngest of all the sons that Jesse had, and it was David. And God commands Samuel to anoint him, David, as the next king. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13, it says, "So Samuel took the horn of the oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. And Samuel then went to Ramah." And David joined Saul's court. He's joined Saul's army, and he's victorious when fighting alongside Saul, including the epic and the most famous story of them all, which is the battle with Goliath. And so constantly these victories would lead eventually to jealousy from King Saul, who eventually tried to kill him, as we learned about last week in our sermon. And while David had many opportunities to assassinate King Saul, he chose not to because he wanted to always follow God's will and be obedient to God's timing. And Saul and his son Jonathan were eventually killed in a battle which led to a power vacuum and a struggle between the house of David and the house of Saul, whose descendants reigned and attempted to seize power, thus leading to a brief civil war, ending up with a victory for the house of David. And so once all the death settles, all the wars that happened, all the civil disruptions were completely gone, David would now be the king of the Israelites. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1, it says, "All the tribes of Israel came to David as Hebron and said, 'We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, while Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel on their military campaigns. And the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will become their ruler.' When all the elders of Israel had come to the king David at Hebron, the king made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel." And thus comes the first test of his leadership. David was the new king. He was a young king, maybe around 30 years old, and he was a new king in town, and he was leading the Israelites against Israel's arch enemy, the Philistines. The Philistines. The Philistines, hearing about a new leadership taking place, decided to send their soldiers to attack. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 17, it says, "When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they went up in full force to search for him. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold." And in that first battle, the Philistines came and noticed the conversation between David and God as to what kind of strategy that they ought to take. This is the first battle, before the battle that we look into our passage this morning. We notice here in the first battle, 2 Samuel 5:18. "Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim." And then it says here, "So David," what did he do? "He inquired of the Lord, 'Shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hands?' The Lord answered them, 'Go, for I will surely deliver the Philistines in your hands.'" And the strategy at the time for the first battle for David as king was to just go and fight them. "Don't worry, I'm going to deliver this enemy into your hands." But this time in our passage, in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 22, we come to a second battle. After they were defeated the first time, after they left all their idols there and the Israelites took over the idols and burned them all and got rid of them, now thus comes the second battle. The Philistines wanted to counterattack. They wanted to have a revenge for their first battle, and they wanted to attack again. And so now they came back, but this time the strategy that God has given David was certainly different. Notice here the same word that David is using here in verse 22, once again in our passage. In verse 22, verse 23, it says, "So David inquired of the Lord." He inquired. And to inquire means to ask counsel. It means to request. I think about King Jehoshaphat, who was another example of somebody that went to the fundamentals of seeking God's guidance. This was when Israel was divided into two nations, Judah and Israel. The king of Israel, Ahab, had asked King Jehoshaphat if he and Judah would be willing to fight their enemies in alliance. But notice what Jehoshaphat said in 2 Chronicles 18:3-4. It says, "Ahab, king of Israel, asked Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, 'Will you go with me against Ramoth Gilead?' Jehoshaphat replied, 'I am as you are, and my people as your people. We are the same. And we will join you in the war.' But Jehoshaphat also said to the king of Israel, 'First seek the counsel of the Lord.'" And when we come across a crossroad in our lives, when we are not sure what kind of decision that we ought to make, whether it's dealing with our future job, whether it's dealing with our future family, or perhaps our future ministry, or perhaps even a circumstance or trial where we don't know what to do next. The question that I have for each and every one of us is, are we, like David, renewing our seeking unto the Lord? Are we asking God, God, what is it that you want me to do next? Are we inquiring of God? Are we asking God for counsel? Are we asking God, requesting God, God, I'm going through this trial. I'm going through this circumstance. I'm going through this difficulty between deciding two different things. What is it that you want me to do? You see, many Christians today, unfortunately, when something comes in our life or when we come to a crossroad of two decisions, we wonder as to where we could turn to make a decision. We could turn to our friends, asking them for guidance. We could turn to our parents, asking them for guidance. We could even turn to a pastor, asking them for guidance. And there's nothing wrong with asking other people for ideas, advice, and counsel. But the first person that we ought to always ask is like who David asked first. It was God. It is God. Have we sought God? Have we asked God first in our life, asking God, God, what is it that you want me to do? And if you're curious as to what kind of decision that God's going to help you to make, we know here in James chapter 1, verse 1, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God. You should ask God, who gives generously to all those without finding fault, and it will be given to you. And many times when we simply ask God, God will make it clear as to what He wants us to do. And we must always ask God first above all else. And when we seek God first, we won't have to worry about anything else. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 31, it says, so do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly fathers know that you need them. But seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And Jesus was pretty much telling the disciples, look, the birds don't worry about what kind of food to eat. They know the food's going to always be there. The animals don't worry about what kind of food or what kind of shelter that they need. It's always going to be there. They know that it's always going to be provided. The plants know that they don't have to worry about whether or not rain or sunshine will be there. They know eventually at some point it's going to be there. And we're not plants, we're not animals, but we are the children of God. And like if a plant is able to trust in the sun or the rain, or like an animal that's able to trust that everything's going to be provided no matter what, we too don't have to worry about tomorrow. We don't have to worry about the clothing that we have to wear or the food that we have to eat and so on, because God, figuratively speaking, God makes it very clear that when we seek the kingdom of God first, that God will always provide. But we must first seek. We must first ask of God, what is it that He wants us to do? And when we seek God, we don't have to worry about anything. We don't have to be anxious about anything else in our life. And so David, we see here, his first move that he made was a renewed seeking. Notice here that we have a renewed seeking of David in the second battle. He's seeking God for guidance in terms of what he needs to do next. Upon his renewed seeking, I want us to then notice our second point, which is the revealed strategy. The revealed strategy. After David asked God, what is it that you want me to do next? Notice what God reveals. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 25, it says, as soon as you hear the sound of the marching in the tops of the poplar trees, move quickly, because that will mean the Lord has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. And David is seeking God for guidance for a strategy, and God responds with a very specific battle plan. But when you look at this battle plan, it's quite confusing. You think to yourself, okay, as soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar trees, what does that mean? And scholars debate as to what this may indicate, but most of them come to the conclusion that it's probably just a sound that David needs to listen for as to the sign of God. And we don't know exactly what the signal is. We don't exactly know what it means or alluding to when it comes to the sound of marching. It could be rustling leaves and so on, whatever it may be. But clearly, God is answering David's seeking and a question with an answer. He's giving him a solution here. And God's strategic plans are different for each person. They're also different in each circumstance. This plan is certainly different from the first battle that had occurred. And no, there is no cookie cutter answer for each person or each situation. Everyone is different from one another. Every situation is different from one another. But one thing is clear. God always has a plan. And yes, every circumstance may be different. Every situation may be different. Every person may be different. But one thing is certain, that God is not different. That God has a plan for each and every one of us. And you may be wondering, does God have a plan for me? God certainly has a plan for you. God has an outline as to what kind of life He wants for you. And He knows exactly what He wants to have for you. But you must first seek and ask God to give you guidance. And God will always provide an answer. And that answer could come in different ways. It could come with yes. It could come with no. It could come with I have something better, or simply wait. And there are different ways that God will answer, but what's clear is that God will always answer, because God is alive and He's living and He is with us today. Amen. And so as we think about David, God tells him to have his army on standby and wait for the signal, which is the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar tree. But as soon as you hear that sound, David, you know what to do. Notice what God commands David. It says, after you hear the sounds of the poplar tree, move quickly. It says here, move quickly. The word move quickly, the phrase there is to stir yourself, is to decide, is to determine. It's really, as soon as you hear the marching orders, as soon as you hear the sign, as soon as you hear the signal, get moving. Don't waste time. Get moving and follow what God has commanded you to. When God gives you a sign and God makes it extremely clear for you to do, you need to obey and move forward what God has commanded through whichever guidance that He's giving you. When I was looking for a job to pay for my college tuition, I remember one time I did find a great job opportunity. And I was slightly particular on the work hours, because although it would pay me $15 in 2010, that's a lot of money back then. Minimum wage was $8 at 2010. And so although I would have gotten a lot of money at that period of time, I didn't want to work on the weekends, on Saturday or Friday and Saturday. I said, I need Friday and Saturday to hang out with my friends. I don't want to do that. And I lost that opportunity. And I remember thinking to myself later in my life, I was like thinking, man, the friends that I hung out with Friday and Saturday, I don't even hang out with them anymore. I could have just worked a job during that period of time. I could have just not wasted that opportunity that God has given me. I was praying for a job, and there comes a job opportunity, and I wasted that opportunity because I didn't move quickly enough to secure it. And that's my struggle sometimes in my life, and perhaps some of you could relate with that as well. And I've been praying for this, but the way that God has answered it, I don't like it. I don't like the way that God has answered this. And previous leadership also had a difficult time with this as well. In 1 Samuel chapter 13, it says, "What have you done?" asked Samuel. Saul replied, "When I saw that the men were scattering, and that you did not come at the set time, and the Philistines were assembling at Milkmash, I thought, now that the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor, so I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." And Samuel commanded Saul specifically what to do, and yet Saul disobeyed because he was scared based on what was taking place in that environment. And I'll be the first to admit, sometimes in my life when I ask God, God, can you help me, give me a direction where you want me to go? And God makes it very clear which direction He wants me to go. I look at God and says, yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. Oh, you telling me that you want me to go this way? You want me to go that way? No, I don't want to do that. And so I can't imagine how God's reaction is. I don't know how His emotions are when it comes to these things. But I mean, if I was God, if I was in that situation, I'll be like, what's wrong with this guy? I gave him an opportunity. I gave him the best path forward to victory. And yet he's not going to accept this sign or this guidance that I'm giving him. And sometimes God's signs and God's guidance is confusing. I mean, who can imagine? I mean, as you read the marching sound of the poplar trees, what in the world is the poplar tree? And you're thinking to yourself, what is this? It's confusing. And sometimes we may not know why God has this particular way of getting us through in this particular path. And it's confusing. We wonder to ourselves, God, you want me to go this direction? God, you want me to go this path? Why? I don't understand this guidance. I don't understand this leading of the Holy Spirit as to where you want me to go. It's confusing. It's confusing. But notice what happens here. Why does God have these strategic plans that just don't make sense? The next portion of the verse may provide an answer. It says here in verse 24, because that will mean the Lord has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. The Lord has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. Part of God's strategic plan is for the people to recognize it's not in our ability, it's not in us that we are able to be victorious. There had to be a way in God's strategic plan to understand when we follow God's path, that at the end of it, when we are victorious, that we say to ourselves, it's not me, but it certainly was by God's grace that I got here. And now we see here in the army, in the battle here with the Philistines, that God was making it clear to David, wait for this signal, because when you wait for this signal and when you move in the immediate aftermath of following this signal, you will know in that moment that I'm already there. I'm already providing the victory. I'm already clearly going to provide you the victory that you and your people need. And that signal, that sign, that guidance indicates that I am in control. And that's the reality where we have when it comes to God directing each and every one of our lives. And we may not know as to the circumstance or the path that we're on. And it may be a little bit confusing, but God is making it very clear to us. Just follow me because I'm already there at the end and you're going to be fine. That's what God is saying to David and the Israelites. It's kind of similar to what God said to the Gideon in Judges chapter 7, verse 2. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands. Of Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. An army that was 33,000 was downsized to a mere 300 soldiers against tens of thousands of enemy soldiers. Yet God assured Gideon that a mere 300 will be victorious and that God would be with them. And even Moses assured the people when they were obedient unto God that the Lord will surely be with the people. In Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 3 and 6, it says, the Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. God will already be ahead of you in the path. He's already there ahead of you in the path. He will destroy these nations before you, and you will take possessions of their land. Joshua also will cross over ahead of you, as the Lord said. And the Lord will do to them what he had done to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, whom he had destroyed along their ways. The Lord will deliver them to you, and you must do to them all that I have commanded you. Be strong and be courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for your Lord God goes with you. He will never leave nor forsake you. And when God is going to give us a strategic plan, he always has a reason behind it. He always has a particular strategy behind it. And that victory will always come about as long as we are submitting to what God has commanded us to do. In order for us to be victorious, there can't just be a revealed strategy, however. There must be something else. And so I want us to notice that something else, which is the third point, which is a responsive submission. Responsive submission. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 25, we see David, what he does next. After God reveals him to the strategy, that this is all to show my might, to show my power. Notice here in verse 25. So David did as the Lord commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. How we respond to the revealed strategy plays a crucial role in our paths to victory. In 1977, at a foggy airport in Tenerife, Spain, there are two Boeing 747s, one from Netherlands and one from Pan Am. And they ended up in the same runway. And you're probably seeing this disaster and you're wondering, how did this happen? How can two planes crash against each other on a runway? And what happened was basically there was one plane, the Pan Am airplane, that was on the runway, that was taxiing in to the runway, getting ready to take off. On the other side, there was a KPL plane, which was from the Netherlands, that was trying to land. And it was a foggy morning and it was raining and you couldn't really see in front of you. If you've ever been in an airplane, you look out the window and there's a storm, you can't see anything outside of it, right? And that's exactly what the pilot, he had to rely on the air traffic controller. And the air traffic controller was telling him, do not land. You are not cleared for landing. Stay where you are. Take off. Yet the pilot of the KLM airplane, he ignored the proper communication from the air traffic controller. He ignored it. It says, well, we got to get there at a certain time. We got to land there at a specific time. We can't be delayed. We were already delayed because of the sparks. We can't be delayed. We have to go. And he willfully chose to disobey the air traffic controller, and he launched into takeoff mode. And as he was launching, he noticed right at the end the Pan Am airplane going this way. And as soon as he was trying to avoid it, trying to get up, the wheels of that airplane completely obliterated the other airplane. All because a pilot chose not to follow basic protocols, chose not to listen to what was already in play as a plan that would provide safety and the best scenario for both of these airplanes. And the truth is, in order for us to be victorious, we not only have to seek, we not only have to trust his strategy, but we also need to respond with full submission. The message is very clear. When God calls, the time is to act now. We can't put off obedience or cling to the past. And following Jesus means total dedication, immediate and unwavering. I think about William Carey. William Carey said this one time. He says, to know the will of God, we need an open map and an open Bible. And to Carey, he sailed to India and became a transformative figure in that nation. And along with several other missionaries, he went following God's will to plant many churches in India, to plant a college there in India. And many people told him, why do you want to go to India? Don't go to India. But Carey says, I've been asking God for a sign. I've been asking God for guidance where he wants me to go. And he keeps pointing out India to me. I have to go. And people kept telling him that you shouldn't go. One day, a senior pastor of his church stood up and famously said to William Carey, young man, sit down. When God is pleased to convert the heathens, he will do it without your help or mine. And he was facing a lot of rejection, even from his own church, even from his own pastor. Yet William Carey felt the calling of God to go to India. And he went to India to go and plant churches, to go and to preach the gospel. And thousands of lives were saved, despite the rejection, not only from his peer group, not only from the people that he faced, not only from even the colonists that he had to face in India. He still chose to obey God and to go make a difference in that nation. He helped start 26 churches, 126 schools, translate the Bible into 44 different languages, founded a medical missions, a saving banks, a seminary, a college, and a Bengali newspaper. And many generations have been transformed because one man who was seeking God's will in his life chose to follow when God made it clear for him where to go. And he followed God and he made a difference there. It was hard, it was difficult, but the end result was he ended up victorious in his Christian life because he made a difference in so many people's lives for the glory of God. One family in particular impacted, which is a family that has attended this church previously from India as well. And as we think about just the life-transforming difference that this man has made because he was willing to follow God's call in his life, I pray that that would be us as well. When we're seeking God and asking God, what is it that you want me to do? And God makes it very clear as to what he wants us to do. I pray that we would act swiftly, that we would decide quickly, that we would move quickly and stir ourselves up to follow and not waste time in obeying God. In Acts chapter 9, verse 13, it says, Lord, Ananias answered, I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your holy people in Jerusalem. And he has come here with authority from the chief priest to arrest all who had come in your name. But the Lord said to Ananias, go, this man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and the kings and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he will suffer for my name. And what's happening here is that the Apostle Paul just got saved. The Apostle Paul was a murderer. He was somebody that was horrendous. He was an evil person. And yet he got saved on his way to persecute even more Christians in Damascus. And after he got saved, God tells Ananias to go and to witness to the Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul and the Ananias in response was wondering, wait, this person's a murderer. this person's evil. You don't know what kind of reputation this person had. And God tells him, it's not for that person's sake, it's not for your sake, it's for me to show how powerful that he must suffer in my name so that he may proclaim God's name into the kingdom to come. And Ananias chose to obey God in that way. And likewise, I wonder for each and every one of us, when we ask God for a sign, and God gives us that sign, are we willing to act swiftly and obey God? And there's many decisions that you need to make tonight or today or this morning. And maybe God is pressing on your heart about a need, either to serve in a ministry or to step up and to lead your family into devotions, or perhaps serve in a particular event, or go on a mission, or go on a domestic mission, or wherever it may be. I don't know where God is calling you. But God, if he's pressing on your heart, I want to challenge you to answer that call immediately. Don't wait a little bit longer. Don't linger around. You might say, I don't know what's going to happen. Don't worry. God's going to provide the victory. God will make it that whenever you follow whatever path that you go on, he's going to provide a way for you to be able to supply all your needs. And so I pray that you would step up, that we would step up. Because it's not in our ability, it's not in the church, it's not a pastor, but it is in God. He's going to help you. No matter who you are, no matter where you are in your spiritual life, no matter what kind of person or personality that you have, God is able to help you. God's able to supply and help you to have a victorious life, but you must respond to that call. You must submit to what God has called you to do. And I pray that we would make that decision this morning, brothers and sisters, because we want to all have a victorious life in Christ. Not in a way that we are successful monetarily or anything like that, but that we would have eternal peace, eternal joy, without any anxiety or struggles that we face in our life. And the only way that we can do that is first we seek God, and then we also see his strategy, and we may not know anything that's about it, but we submit to what he has called us to do. And I pray that that would be our heart this morning as well. Let's have a word of prayer at this time.